KTRS. And lots going on in the world, and we'll get to some of that, all of that, including the markets a little bit later on. Tesla's back in the news, and its subsidies from the feds and tax breaks and all of that. Mike Matheny, Cardinal manager, is going to be along. Walter Knoll is going to be in a new reality TV show. We're going to have Southside Johnny Band. Dan Strauss and Company is going to rock out here today at some point. And then Smash is going to be here. But Brian Williams, anchor for NBC, is in a little bit of hot water because I supposedly, over the last 12 years, he has misremembered a story from when he was in Iraq. Last night on the NBC Evening News, he apologized.
On this broadcast last week, in an effort to honor and thank a veteran who protected me and so many others after a ground fire incident in the desert during the Iraq War invasion, I made a mistake in recalling the events of 12 years ago. It did not take long to hear from some brave men and women in the air crews who were also in that desert. I want to apologize. I said I was traveling in an aircraft that was hit by RPG fire. I was instead in a following aircraft. We all landed after the ground fire incident and spent 2 harrowing nights in a sandstorm in the Iraq desert. This was a bungled attempt by me to thank one special veteran and, by extension, our brave military men and women, veterans everywhere, those who have served while I did not. I hope they know they have my greatest respect and also now my apology.
That was NBC News, Brian Williams from last night. Now, before we go any further, I need to expose my conflict of interest. I like Brian Williams. I like Brian Williams a lot. I really like Brian Williams. I don't know how you misremember a story where you're covering a war zone and you're in a helicopter and another helicopter gets hit, and then you remember it that your helicopter got hit. Am I hearing this correctly?
And it's one thing to be telling your boys at the local pub, I got hit. My helicopter got hit by an RPG, but you're telling the country, you're telling the world this story.
I really like Brian Williams. I really like him. I'm sorry. I have a hard time buying the fact it wasn't like, was it a red sweater or a green sweater you were wearing that day?
But to his defense, he did apologize.
He did apologize. You are correct. I also,
a dozen years later. And
that's confusing too.
He wrote a blog about it that actually talked about it after in a 2008 NBC blog post with Brian Williams' byline, quote, "The Chinook helicopter flying in front of ours took an RPG to the rear rotor." Flying in front of ours. His didn't take fire. He didn't land until a good 40-plus minutes later.
So he wrote. So back in 2008, he reported it the way it happened, and then all these years later, he misremembered it, and as he was in the helicopter in which went down.
Right.
Now I know memory plays tricks on you. I know it does. And I know that in this day and age, especially as an anchor in his position, you have to remember a lot of things. But
you remember stuff that actually happened to you.
Right. That's a good point. You're right. I'm trying to somehow I don't think he... I can't imagine for the life of me that he was trying to pump up his own story to make himself look better. But there's really no other excuse. There's really no other option here because I don't even know of a similar experience.
But most of us don't. Right. Most of us haven't been in a war zone. Most of us haven't been
shot down in a Chinook helicopter, and neither has Brian Williams.
Fair enough.
I don't, man. That's egg on the guy's face. I guess the only thing he could do was take a minute and fall on his sword and apologize.
He sucked it up and took it like a man.
But he only apologized after there were people raising red flags and people who were there and who said, hey, he didn't show up till an hour later. He walked over and we shoot him away because they were getting in the way as we were actually trying to fix our helicopter. The flight engineers from the first helicopter that was shot down were outraged by this because, sorry, Brian, you weren't even there.
So flight engineer Lance Reynolds wrote on a blog post on Facebook, sorry, dude, I don't remember you being on my aircraft. I do remember you walking up about an hour after we landed to ask me what had happened. Then I remember you guys talking, and then I remember you guys taking back off in a different flight of Chinooks from another unit and heading to Kuwait to report your quote-unquote war story to the nightly news. The whole time we were stuck in Iraq trying to repair the aircraft and pulling our own security. So clearly they were not happy with the misremembering of NBC Nightly News anchor Brian Williams.
Another sign of social media and the power of social media, because had that guy not made that post and raised a stink.
You're right. He brought an anchor to his knees, but that one's for the books right there. I'm sorry. I wasn't in the helicopter that crashed. I forgot. I was in the other one that didn't crash.
I was safe.
That's a good one. All right. 628 here, Big 550.